Tonight we're going to use stamps by Judith and Heather. Okay, so I'm going to move this out of the way. And I'm going to zoom out. Okay, so you can see some of the stuff I have spread out. I have the 3 card samples out that I'm going to talk about tonight. This card is an interactive stamp. I don't have the package handy to tell you the name of the stamp. I can tell you it's stamp number C116. That's all I can tell you. And then we have the Woodsy Gnome, and he's all dressed up for Christmas. And then our big feature tonight is the Nativity Series. I saw this set in the booth and I just knew I had to create with it. I'm going to zoom into it real quick so you can get a better look at it. So this set includes the building, the angel, all 3 pieces of the Holy Family, the 3 kings, a star, a shepherd, and a donkey. And I realized after I was looking at the website, there's also a sheep that I don't have, so I will get that the next time I see Heather. I did my coloring with the Tombow markers, and you can get these through Stamps by Judith and Heather as well. I may be using colors that they don't carry or colors that Heather doesn't normally use. There's probably a video out there of Heather using them, and I will find a link to that video because she does some awesome things where she picks up colors tip to tip and all kinds of good things with these to use on her stamps. So I'm going to move some of this out of the way, and we are going to get started. I also tonight will be using a water brush, a white gel pen, and a Stardust gel pen to get some sparkle. And I will be showing you how I did this background as well tonight. So let me clear some of this out of the way. Stamps, STUBBYs. So the first one we're going to use is the Woodsy Gnome. And I don't know if Heather ever thought about using him for Christmas, but it's the closest thing I had to an elf, so we're going to make the gnome and dress him all up for Christmas. So here's the card sample I used. So I'm using this stamp set. I didn't use the Merry Christmas. And I used 2 of the STUBBYs, the dots and a snowflake. So we're going to get started with him. Very easy color. I pre-stamped him, and I'm going to hold him up for a minute so that you can see. If I'm doing clothes or something, I like the lines from my pen to show because it adds texture to the fabric in what he's wearing. And I also mixed a tan and a gray into his beard. So we're going to color him real quick. Red and a green marker, and a gray and a tan. So the markers I'm using are 990 and N95, and I'm using 158 and 845, and I'm using 850 for the skin. So let me focus again. Zoom out, zoom in. Focus there. It's a little bit more focused. So I'm going to start with his hands. And his nose. And his toes. These stamps are very easy to color. There's not a whole lot of time involved with them. So, and I am going to grab an extra little bit of pink of 761 to add just a little bit of highlight. So, it's that easy to color. So for his hat, I'm going to make his hat red. And I'm just going to come right in. Color in his hat. So I'm going to take my brown marker and I'm going to use the fine tip to go over the lines that are in the stamp to make those just a little darker, let them stand out, to add some texture and some shading to the image. It's that easy to color. For his coat, I'm just going to come down with my pen and I'm going to let the lines overlap to get the stripes in the fabric of what he's wearing. And I'm going to make sure I get his sleeve over here. And he's colored. A little bit over here. A little bit of some green on the leaves and the twig he's holding. There. And now all I have to do is his beard, and there's a little bit of hair up here. And I'm going to hit the highlights of the stamp with the tan. And he's colored that quick. So I'm going to grab a red and a green ink pad and use my STUBBYs. And we're going to do red dots. And the green for the snowflakes. I'm just going to randomly fill in my background. If I miss, no big deal. If I missed here, I didn't get the whole thing. And then I would trim him down and put him on a card. He's done that quick. Now, one other thing we could do to him, let me cover up my ink pads real quick. So I want to make him jump up off the page because right now he's just kind of floating there. So I'm going to take my gray marker that I used on his beard and I'm just going to outline him real quick. So he just jumps off the page just a little bit more. So then when you get him, you can trim him down, mount him on whatever colors of paper you want, and he's colored that quick. So if you're a person who struggles with coloring, these are the stamps for you. So the original, he was done with blue and a little bit of maroon. I just made him for Christmas. So he's a great Christmas stamp. Okay, we're going to move on. So I want to show you how I did this card. And let me grab the punch real quick that I used. And I'm going to show you how I did that as well. So I'm going to put my Merry Christmas stamp on a block and just stamp that out. And I'm just going to stamp this out. And I have a scrap of a piece of red, and I have a scrap of a piece of green. So I'm going to take my punch, and I'm going to punch this out. Okay? So I don't have, this is a punch, it's not a die, so I can't graduate my sizes. So I'm going to punch one out of green and one out of red. Now I'm going to cut these in half. And see where it has the point on the middle from the punch? I'm going to cut these down. And I'm going to do that to all 4 pieces. They don't have to be the same because nobody's going to see it. Just following the edge of the punch and cutting off that little point. So I'm going to set my green ones here, and I'm going to set my red ones out on the outside. Try and stay in the frame. Going to grab my glue. I'm going to put some glue on here. And do the same thing from this side and try and get it as even as I can. And I'm going to put some glue on here on the green and add the red. And that's how I did the Merry Christmas on my card. By just punching 2 more out of color. So let me flip it over so nobody's going to see the back. So it doesn't matter. And any of these weirdness that's going on back here, you can't see it from the front. I mean, if it's really off, you can slide it because of the glue, peel it off and move it, but right now, for what I'm doing, I'm not going to worry about it because, and that's how I did my Merry Christmas, so I didn't have to ink around the edges. And you can do that with any shaped punch you have. If I wanted to put more at the top, I would just punch them again and then cut it the other way. In half the other way, and then trim down. And then I could put it at the top as well. So you could make it look like you had all these dies going on by just piecing the back. Another way to stretch your punch instead of just punching one way. I hope. Okay, so moving on, I have my card base. I'm just going to fold it in half. Okay. So now I'm going to take my leaflet stamp. And I'm going to stamp in red. Just going to ink up my stamp. Oh, well, I put the red lid on the green, but that's no big deal. Because I'll just work around the green because I'm going to use it anyway. So, do as I say, not as I do. Okay, so We're going to work with the red, and I'm going to stamp it 5 times. Okay, then I'm going to come into my green and stamp it one more time. There's my poinsettia. That easy. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tap off the red, go into the green. 1, 2. Part of it goes off the card, that's fine. So this is how I made this card. This stamp, 2 ink pads, and my little Merry Christmas. And I put some yellow gems in the middle for the poinsettia flowers. But great little stamp. Easy to make a card. And what I did with this one, again, I just took my gray marker and I outlined it to make it jump off the page. Now I'm going to show you one other thing with that stamp. And I'm going to grab a mowed lawn and a fired brick distress pad. So, clean that off. Okay, there's my poinsettia. Tap that off, and I'm going to go into the green distress ink and get my couple of leaves. Okay. Same thing. This is Memento ink, this is distress ink, and it all depends on the colors you grab. But because we all know distress ink is reactive with water, I'm going to take my water brush and I'm going to blend that ink. And I got a big puddle, so it's working a little better now. My brush is just too wet. You can see where I'm getting a little bit of shadowing in the middle of my leaves and my petals. And if you want a little more color, just go right into your ink pad with the water and color with your water brush right from the ink pad. So, those are 2 quick ways to use this stamp. It just depends on how much time you have and what inks you have at hand. So those are the 2 simple things I wanted to show you tonight to show you how easy it is to work with these stamps. They don't take you all day. You can do what you want. And by the way, this is not watercolor paper, it's just 80-pound cardstock. As long as you're not drenching the paper, you can get it a little wet. But it's 2 different ways to use the same stamp. So now we're going to move on to the beast. And I did pre-stamp some of this, but I am not going to use all these images because we would be here for a couple hours for you to watch me color. To color the building for the Nativity, for the ground, I'm just going to take my yellow marker and scribble right over the stamp image. Get some color down for that. I'm going to take a darker yellow and highlight over the stamped images. I'm just swiping across it. I'm not actually coloring right on it. Okay, so it's that easy to color the bottom. I'm going to also add a little bit more of a brown to it. So just to put a little bit more ground there so it's not floating up on the card. And I'll hold that up for you to see. So you can see the three different colors. And where I have this gap right here, I'm just going to come back with one of my yellows and fill it in and bring some of that yellow down as well to the ground. So there's the base for my building. Let me zip out, zoom out a little bit because I know I'm not staying in frame. Okay, so I'm taking my light tan, which is 990, and I'm just coloring the building. So there's my base color. And you can see I haven't colored every single part of it. There are blank spaces in it. So, alright, so now I'm going to add some brown, just like I did on the part below. I'm just swiping some color. Okay. So there's my color. I'm going to quick cut this out. And you can see I'm not even cutting really close to the lines. There's a little bit of gap in it, and that's okay. So now you can see the background is showing through my card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take two of my punches and I'm going to punch a hole in each section. And that's going to allow me to get my scissors in to cut out the middle. So if you're not an X-Acto knife friend, that's the best way to get into something. And I usually, if I'm cutting out, I cut with my scissors from below, not over top. Don't be afraid to use your scissors. And you can be cutting things out that fast. So now keep in mind I cut everything on this card out. So, but I wanted you to see how fast it was for me to cut out the building. And I'm going to show you this card from the side. The building is there 3 times. One is flat, and then I used foam tape to pop the other 2 sections up to add dimension to the card from the side. You can see some of the tape. And anything that was attached to it, I glued to it and put the foam tape behind. I just had to double up the layers because the building was doubled up. So it's that quick to do the coloring on this. Now I've got some spots on here I want to add a little bit more color, so I'm going to come back with my original color and just color over the whole thing. Just because there's some spots that are just too light. And I didn't notice it until it was already cut out. So no big deal. I'm just going to come back and add some more color to it to make it a little bit darker. So there we go. There's our building for our nativity. If I taught this card in a class, this would be a 3-hour card class to make 1 card. So I love how the card came out, but so that's my building. So I'm going to show you real quick how I colored this. You grab a couple shades of green, a gold and a yellow, and a brown, and a skin color. So, and I color things when I'm coloring, like I know I have to color all of these. Everything that's going to be that color, I colored on all the stamps at one time. The one thing I did do to Mary and Joseph was I took a black micron pen and made a dot for their eye. That's the only thing I added to the stamp image, was the dot for the eyes. Joseph has some brown on him. He's got his belt and this little bit right here. And that's the pink again, not the brown. So and I did his coat with green, or his robes rather. And you can see how fast I'm coloring. I'm not worried about the direction, and I'm just swiping the color. And the nature of the markers are, if I overlap, I'm going to build up my color a little bit. So that's how I can add some depth with just using the same marker. I'm going to zoom in on this. Okay. So now I'm going to take a lighter green and I'm going to go over it, and it's going to lighten that up just a little bit, fill in a little bit where I don't have a whole lot of layers of that green. So I used 2 greens on that. I'm going to come back with my brown again and add just a little bit more highlight on the stamp lines from the stamp. So, and then I've got the yellow for here. I'm going to add a little bit of golden yellow on top of that. He's now colored. I'm going to put a little bit of pink and a little bit of gray in here. I'm going to highlight the stamp with the gray just to get some shading in there. And I want my yellow and my gold again for the little bit of straw. And I want my tan for its bed. I'm going to highlight it with a little bit of brown. And for the halo part, I'm going to grab a different marker and just kind of add some color to that. So that's 2 pieces colored that fast. Okay, and so for Mary, I have my base color of blue. Okay, going to add a little bit more highlighting with that same color because it'll go right over top of the first color. And then I'm going to come back with a darker blue. Add a little bit of highlights to her. And then I'm going to come back with my light tan and go right over top of that then. And I get some more highlighting. And again, it changes the look of the color. And there you go for your building. Now I would fussy cut these out and tuck them behind the building so they're inside it and set this in front of them. So these will both be even with the grass or the straw. I mean, you could even do it like this, how I have them staggered. Go like this. And, you know, what is hanging out of the side, you just cut off. So you don't, on this one, they're all on the outside of the building. You could put them inside the building as well. Another tip for you is you have these and you're like, okay, I'm not sure how I want to color this. Grab your stamps because the images on the stamps are colored. So it will give you an idea of how to color when you're looking at the packaging from the stamp. Now on this stamp, it's kind of purples. Well, I had purple going on with one of the kings, so I wanted to do her in blue. So, and my color choices are definitely different than the color choices that are on here. So, it just gives you a starting point about how to color. That's how I figured out my coloring. It's not exact, but it gave me an idea of how to put the color. Zoom out a little bit. So you can see these are similar, but they're not the same. So each time you color, something's going to come out a little bit darker. Now, these were the colors that Heather chose for the kings. I got kind of similar. This one got a little blotchy, but I didn't redo it because I kind of liked it once I got them all together, where I reversed some of the colors. she had this king that I did in purple, in greens and pinks, and the king that I did with the yellows and the oranges and the gold, she kind of had in those colors, but I went my own direction. And this one I totally went and took the greens on this one. So you have an idea where to start, but you end up in your own place. And if I did like 6 of these cards, none of the coloring would be the same. It would be similar because I would set my colors. So if you're looking at the stamps in the booth, I believe, Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a picture of the dies, or there's a little tag on the packaging that says matching die available. So according to the message from Heather, she might have some of these dies at Stamp Away. So if you're in Ohio, Stamp Away's the last weekend of July. It's July 31st and August 1st. It's basically a one-day show. And Scrapbook Expo is in Schaumburg, which is near Chicago. And once the dies are available, you can always order them online along with the stamps. So, but like I said, I did not use the dies. I cut these out. And you all saw my picture about all the pile of all the paper that I had cut out to make this. And I did not do my coloring and everything for this on regular cardstock. I used mixed media paper from Strathmore. This is the paper I colored and cut out of because I wanted my images to have some meat to the paper. We're used to stamping on 80-pound cardstock. This is 184 pounds. And if you decided to get it wet, it would take the water and not buckle. So, this is the paper I used. And this is all the paper, also the paper I used tonight. So I will be finishing this card and posting it. And it's just going to be these 4 images. And I'm going to do some background for the background of the card. So I use Memento inks. I'm going to zoom out so that you can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to spread out a little bit. Okay, let me refocus. Okay, so I'm going to set this up here. So these are the colors I used for my sky. I used these 5 colors. I used 3 blues, a purple, and a black from Memento for the sky. And for the ground, and to show that there's like a little bit of desert in the background, I used cantaloupe, peanut brittle, and potter's clay for the ground. So for the sky, I used Summer Sky, Danube Blue, Nautical Blue, Sweet Plum, and Black. And I will put all these colors on Facebook with a picture of this card so you know which colors I used. Yes, I did color all 3 levels of the building, but only the top building did I do the darker shading to it. I just did the base color on the other 2 because I was worried if I didn't get them even, which I didn't, some of it would show through, either inside or outside. So yes, I did color all 3 levels of the building. And so I'm going to set that over here. I have a piece of 80-pound cardstock. When I did the sky for the 7x7 card, I started out with an 8x8 square and I cut it down. So, but I want to show you the ink blending, so I'm just going to do it on this, and then I'll be able to use this background for the card I started to stamp and color tonight. So, and I used my blending brushes. I don't know what they're called. I say they're like a spoon. So, and let me just get these separated out so I get the right color and the right pad. And it did work light to dark. So it does take a little bit of time to build up your color, because the first little bit of the color is going to soak into the page, into the cardstock, and then it's going to start sitting on top of the other colors. So, and to get my light blue started, I'm going right with my ink pad to the paper to get my light blue started. And then I'm going to come back with the blending brush and smooth it out. And if you can see the lines of the pad, don't worry about that, because it's all going to get colored with the darker colors. But if I went direct to the paper without using the pad, I'd be here till the cows come home. Or to the manger, haha. Trying to get this color built up this fast. So, like I said, I started, and you just saw, I just dragged the ink pad right onto the paper. And if anybody has any questions or comments so I can see them easier, type them in all caps, because I'm focused on telling you about this at the moment. Okay, so now I've got a good base of this color, so now I'm just going to come straight across and build my color this way, because I want to start building that color up. Okay, now I've got a blob down here. I'm going to try and build kind of a little more even. So I'm going to do a little bit of swirling around that to kind of knock that down a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to work from the bottom and take the cantaloupe and work from the bottom. The cantaloupe is a little bit heavier ink, so I don't have to drag the pad onto it. And this, because it's going to be ground, can be splotching. And I want to blend my cantaloupe just up to the blue, where I can start seeing a line. You don't want it to turn green. Okay, so now I've got some color in here. I'm going to go sideways. For the sky. So I may revisit those colors. So let me grab this again real quick so that you can see how these blend together where it's lighter. So, okay. So I'm going to go back into the blues, and I'm going to grab my next shade of blue. And I'm going to start blending right over top of the light blue. as I'm coming down farther, I'm going to start off my page so I don't get big solid lines. And I need a Kleenex so that I don't get my fingers in all the color. You can use a tissue, you can use a paper towel, you can use a post-it note, just something to put your fingers on to hold the paper. Okay, so now I have a good layer of that. I'm just going to come straight back and forth straight across. Because now I'm putting ink on ink, no more of this ink is going to soak into the paper. So I can just come straight across my page. And I want some of the, so you can see how I'm getting like shadows and light and dark in it. That's okay, because it's going to blend in, or it could be moonlight coming through. So I'm going to go into my darkest blue. And now I'm gradiating down with the shades of blue. Once this one is on, you'll really see the 3 different shades taking form. And to start, I am going to do circular blending. So now you can see my 3 layers in the sky. I get a little bit darker over on this side to balance out the other side. And now I'm just going to take my brush and go back and forth and smooth that out. And as like I said, right now there is no more color soaking into the paper. It's just sitting on top of itself. Okay. So now I'm going into the black. And the black is going to go on with a circular motion. And it's really going to put the darkness of the nighttime sky at the top of my card. And this one I want to kind of do a halo around the outside. I don't want to go right into, or I can move it over here where it doesn't have all this color behind it. That I want to kind of have an opening in the middle towards the top. And now I'm just going to blend it by going across. I'm going to pull a little bit of black down the sides to help frame that in. Okay, and now I'm going to add the purple. And I want to really ink up my brush for the purple, because the purple is going to add some light back to the black. It's going to, you won't see a whole lot of it, but you will see it sitting on the top. And I'm going to come down into the blue just a little bit in the center with the purple. The purple just tones down the black just a little bit. And in a minute I'll zoom into this. And I want to come down my sides just a little bit into that medium blue with the purple. So I'm going to grab my peanut brittle. Skies are not difficult, especially if you want a nighttime sky. So I'm going into the peanut brittle, and I'm going to flip this so I can work at the bottom. And I want to move over, I'm going to fold my paper up so I don't pull any of that blue into the bottom of my card. And it's just a little bit darker than the cantaloupe, but it's dark enough to make a difference. And this is still soaking into the paper a little bit, so now I'm going to come back and forth straight across because I want to add texture for the ground. So, and if I use the edge of my brush, it creates some lines. I'm going to come back and try and smooth some of that out because I want the texture to be subtle. Okay, a little bit more of this lightly up here into the middle. And then I'm going to grab my potter's clay and just do a little bit around the bottom edge. And I'm going to get most of that off. Just one little bit. And I'm just going to brush across. Because I want to put a finished edge on the bottom of my card. So I'll flip this over. And you can see how I blended in my sky. Now they're going to come out different all the time. Now where I've got this blob direct, the line right in the middle, I'm going to take my light blue again and I'm going to try and blend some of that out. Blend out that harshness of that line because there's not as much color buildup there in the middle. So a little better. And then I would just set my building on it, figure out how much, where I want my card to go. The purple is very subtle over top of the black. So let me hold this up closer to the camera. If I angle it a little bit, you can see where these little swirls are right here? That's where most of the purple is. So it's just very subtle and it tones down the sharpness of the black. So you don't really see a lot of the purple. It's just over top of the black. Now, what I did do, because there's so much ink just sitting right on top of this, I did come and I buffed just a little bit to get just the tiniest bit of ink that was left that hadn't dried. You could hit it with your heat gun if you want, it doesn't matter. So, but the Memento ink dries pretty quick. You just need to buff it just a little bit when it's layered ink, because right at the top there's 5 colors of ink stacked up. So to make my stars, I'm going to use a number 10 white jelly roll, and I'm just going to randomly make dots. And I'm even coming down into the lighter part because the stars are going to come down later. So that's how I did the background. If you wanted to and you didn't have, you wanted to add some more shimmer to it, you could take a Stardust pen and do little shimmer dots in it too. The Stardust you have to do like little tiny little swirls. And the Stardust you have to keep, the ink will kind of plug up the tip of the pen just a little bit. So you do have to push a little harder with a Stardust pen to get them to show up. Now, if you didn't have the star stamp, you could just go like this. And make a star. You could still do a couple of those in the sky even if you had the star. So let me show you again next to this all the colors I used for the sky. So these are my sky colors. 3 shades of blue, a light, medium, and a dark, a black. And I would not use a bright purple, use something a little darker. And for my ground, I used the cantaloupe, the peanut brittle, and the potter's clay. So here's the one that you've all been seeing, and here's the one I just did for you now. And then I would just put my building and my characters on it and cut it down and mount it to a card. Any questions? So let's recap real quick. So we have the kings and the star, Mary, Joseph, and the baby, the shepherd, the donkey, the building, and the angel. And like I said when I started, I didn't realize there was a sheep, and I have to get the sheep. So that's what I used to make this card. Like Heather said earlier, there are dies coming maybe by the end of the month for some of these other images other than just the kings. But you all know I'm nuts. This is my favorite thing. I find this relaxing to cut these out. Don't forget how I showed you to cut out the building by using your punches. Punch out the middle and use your scissors from below. And let me get back in the middle. Punch out and use your scissors from underneath. I probably, at some point, if I do a whole bunch of these, I'll just use my X-Acto knife. I will tell you, because I tried it, the stamps, the edges are not completely solid all the way around. The Scan and Cut does not like them. Some of them I cut right into the middle. Like the angel has, let me zoom in. Let me refocus. There are breaks in the lines of the stamp, so the blade went right into the wing. So you either need to wait for the dies or use your scissors. The Scan and Cut will not cut these stamps. And it's just because of the nature of the drawings. And there's nothing wrong with that. So. And then the other thing we touched on was using the red and green ink with the leaflet to make your poinsettias. Okay. And then we used the markers, and the stubbies to make the Woodsy Gnome into Christmas. So that's what we did tonight. Fun stamps, fun projects. I hope you all enjoyed it. Also, I showed you how I use the punch to border my greeting when I don't have a die, by punching extra ones and gluing them from behind on the edges. That's what I have for you tonight. Thanks everybody. Hope you have a great evening. Bye-bye.